Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming along to the final program webinar for the National Transition to Management program for Varroa Destructor. The Transition to Management program has been running now for nearly 2 years. Some of you might be aware, maybe all of you, that we do wrap up on the 6th of February in 2026. And we wanted to just do a final webinar to go through the path that we've walked, starting from where and why we went to T2M in the first instance, looking at some of the key aspects of the program to date, and then the plans for each of your jurisdictions going forward. So my name's Tamara Prentice. I'm the National Varroa Mite Transition to Management Coordinator, and I'm very grateful to have been able to run this program for the last couple of years. I wanted to thank everyone so far that's been involved in the program. We couldn't have been and prepared what we've done without the involvement and the feedback from all of you. So we've had feedback from state associations, clubs, individual beekeepers, as well as all of the jurisdictions and plenty of other people. I wanted to give a really special shout out to ARBIC particularly. ARBIC have worked side by side with us throughout this process, giving us direct feedback, from some of the industry bodies especially, and we've been really grateful for that to help ensure that we're trying to get the best outcomes for everybody that we're working for at this stage. We know that Varroa is still rapidly marching on, and we knew from the start of this program that Varroa would still be spreading when this program came to an end, and that we won't feel the full impacts of that until post T2M. We've tried to manage this through a focus on the legacy pieces, and we'll leave you in capable hands with the jurisdictions, the state associations and the clubs having access to hopefully some good resources to help you. We've got a really tight schedule tonight, so I'll stop waffling now and I'll hand over to Chris Anderson. So Chris is going to give us an overview of the response to Varroa Destructor, and thanks Chris, and thank you all for coming along.
Thanks, Tamara. Thanks, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Certainly can. Thanks, Chris.
Excellent. Look, just very briefly, Tamara's asked me to provide a bit of an overview of the eradication phase of the response. So if we could just go to the next slide, please. So I guess what I wanted to do with this is just, I guess, point out and recognise that this really important body of work that's been completed over the last couple of years under the National Varroa Mite Management program banner, it has been one and the same as the eradication response. So it's all been completed under the same biosecurity system and under the same emergency response that was funded by 21 industry and government partners. And that funding has been sustained now for more than 3.5 years through our national biosecurity system. And so that's a real testament to the fact that the national biosecurity system is capable of standing up an eradication and slow the spread program, but also pivoting and then adjusting to deliver a transition to management program like the one that you have been a part of. And this is something that is world-class. This good work that has been undertaken as part of the transition to management program has only really been possible because of the system that we have, and in particular the emergency plant pest response deed, which was introduced in 2005 to enable effective responses to incursions of serious exotic threats. The governance of our cost-sharing partners, the governance that's been provided by our cost-sharing partners through the Consultative Committee on Emergency Plant Pests, which has overseen this response, both the eradication and the transitional phases of this response, is to be commended and recognised as being of world-class standards. Next slide, please. It's also important to recognise over a decade's worth of preparedness that was undertaken nationally and within each state and territory for the eventual arrival of Varroa. So what we're seeing being delivered over the last couple of years really is the culmination of a lot of that work that was undertaken over many years and through many different organisations. And I think it's fair to say, among the many pests that we do run preparedness programs for, Varroa was certainly up there as one of the most well prepared for. And this was reflected in the strong will of our industry partners to proceed with an eradication in spite of the early challenges that we faced when it was detected in the Newcastle region. Next slide, please. So with the initial detection in June 2022, we quickly established that the epicenter, at least in the Newcastle region, was not close to the shipping port where the sentinel hives were located, but rather was further inland around the suburbs of Tomago and Heather Brae. And this was based on mite infestation numbers that were being uncovered during that early period. At that time, there was really only a limited number of beekeeping operations that showed significant levels of infestation. And so this enabled the response to undertake surveillance and tracing to track the spread of the mite, which was largely associated with beekeeper movement. So it was largely associated with the movement of bees and the trading of bees between beekeepers at that point in time. That's not the case anymore. But as we moved from 2022 into 2023, as you can see on the screen, it became clear that the infestation was far more widespread than originally anticipated. And the detection of the Kempsey cluster in August really sealed the fate of the attempted eradication and drove us to change tack towards the present day National Varroa Mite Management Program that you will be seeing presented tonight. Next page, please. So, in summary, summarising the eradication phase at least, the area that was requiring initial actions was large, but we had very strong stakeholder support to proceed with a response that would at least preserve the chance to eradicate if we could get on top of it. That division of labour that was required to manage that large area, however, contributed to perceptions of stabilisation and containment, especially in late 2022 and early 2023. And from early 2023, we saw that significant expansion in the size of those zones. That really shifted the stakeholder sentiment because we went from sort of 1 in 6 beekeepers who were directly impacted by the response in January 2023 to 1 in 3 beekeepers, so from 1 in 6 to 1 in 3 by September. And that impact on beekeepers' lives and their livelihoods really forced us to move away from the eradication strategy and put in place what you have seen delivered over the last couple of years. Next slide, please. So I thought I'd just very quickly talk about how Varroa is changing our industry and what we are seeing. Unfortunately, it wasn't a pest that could be eradicated, and we are seeing that starting to be reflected in the numbers of registered beekeepers. This is just for our state in New South Wales. The beekeeper numbers now are where they were in 2021. So we did see a significant increase in people registering as beekeepers during the response, probably driven by the ability to claim owner reimbursement costs. But that has now completely fallen out of the system, and we're back to where we were in 2021, and those numbers continue to drop off, which is a really interesting and probably a predictable outcome. And we're clearly facing unprecedented challenges for both beekeepers and for the pollination sector, but there is potentially a bright side to this. If you can go to the next slide, please, and just click. See, so in the last 6 months in New South Wales, despite the drop-off in the number of registered beekeepers and our number of total commercial beekeepers falling below 1,000 for the first time in a number of years, we have started to see an uptick in the number of registered hives. Now, that's nowhere near where we need to be, but it is hopefully a sign of things starting to improve. Because we do need to build our hive numbers to deal with the loss of the feral bee population. So I will now hand over to Nadine Chapman. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm the National Training and Education Coordinator. Next slide. So the training incorporated a lot of things, and as many of you will know about the workshops in particular, in order to have those workshops, we first needed to train our contract trainers. So there was 48 of those from all states in Australia and territories. Sorry, not Northern Territory. And we held train the trainer so that they could go through the content, be really comfortable with it, and so that there would be a nationally consistent message. So there were 3 train the trainer events, and they were also attended by departmental staff and the Varroa development officers. So we'd all have that same knowledge base to start with and be familiar with the content that would be provided at the workshops. Next slide. So there were 121 workshops around the nation. You can see where they were in this map here. So the red are where there was 1 workshop, blue is 2 workshops, and yellow is 3 workshops. And in terms of the number of individual beekeepers, there was almost 1,300 commercial beekeepers and 6,800 recreational beekeepers. And we reached 50% of the commercial hive brands. So one business, one hive brand may have sent multiple beekeepers. So that's why we looked at it in terms of hive brands rather than just individuals. So we reached 50% of commercial beekeepers. Our aim was to reach 75. So we didn't get there, but we had a really good try at it. And then we also reached 12% of the recreational hive brands. And if you add up all of the colonies that those hive brands relate to, we reached over 55% of registered hives in Australia. And of course, there are an unknown number of unregistered beekeepers and unregistered hives out there, but we have reached a significant portion. Next slide. And I just wanted to quickly highlight the role that the beekeeping community played in making sure those workshops were really well attended. So if you look here in the light purple, that's people who heard about the workshops through the beekeeping clubs and associations. But there's also word of mouth there, and some of it would also be from social media. So everyone that helped get someone else to a workshop, I really thank you, because it was so important that they were well attended. Next slide. And the workshops were very highly recommended. So 99% of them people would recommend the workshop, and they rated very highly on different metrics. But the important thing I want you to note here is that the understanding of Varroa that people had before they attended a workshop was about 2.3 out of 4. And after they attended a workshop, that increased to 3.5. So you can see that we have a very clear, measurable impact that the workshops were increasing people's understanding of how to manage Varroa mite. Next slide. So the workshops, if you didn't manage to get to one, or if you've suddenly now got Varroa and you've forgotten some of the information that you hoped you would keep in your head, there are a variety of resources for you to get that information. So you can head to the resources page of the website. There's a guide to Varroa management there, which came out recently. There's also the workshop notebook that you can download. There's 35 videos. There's a slide deck for the normal workshop, and soon the advanced workshop slides will be going up so that you can download those slides and use them in your clubs or wherever you'd like to. And you can also do an online version of the workshop via the Plant Health Biosecurity online training. Next slide. There's also a short course available on the Varroa website, and this is more focused on surveillance and monitoring, so it will be more helpful for states that don't yet have Varroa. Those that do have Varroa, I would suggest that you need to do the introduction to Varroa management. Next slide. And because Varroa is such a big shock to our systems, and there's been a lot of hardship both through the eradication but also in learning how to manage Varroa, it's important that we try and keep as many commercial beekeepers in the industry as we can. And so the farm business resilience it was begun by the national government, and some states already had programs for beekeepers. But the transition to management program helped the Tasmanian and Western Australian programs to be able to enable beekeepers to attend, whereas New South Wales and Queensland didn't have a farm business resilience program for beekeepers. So T2M put on one workshop in each of those states. Next slide. So there are a wealth of fact sheets available. The ones in blue here are already available and the others will be coming shortly. So they're on a range of different things, both chemical and non-chemical methods, and there'll be things on business as well. Next slide. And now I will hand over to Bianca.
Bianca, I might just jump in for 1 second and thank you so very much for being a leader of one of the key components of this program. I just wanted to point out, and I should have done so at the start, down the bottom of the screen there's a Q&A function. So if you think of any questions while any of us are talking, please feel free to pop your question in the chat. We can answer some there, or otherwise we've also got a live Q&A session at the end as well if you'd rather talk to them directly. So Nadine Chapman that just presented was the leader of our education program within the T2M program, and Bianca has run the extension and engagement part of the program, the Varroa Development Officers. Hopefully most of you have engaged with or dealt with, and these two components of the program have been huge. They've been by far the largest components, with the idea being that education and support on the ground would be the best way to help slow the spread. So massive kudos to these ladies, and Bianca, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tamara. So I just want to quickly skip over to the next slide, please. I just wanted to give a quick brief of what is extension. The vast majority of transition to management programs include an extension staff in some capacity. And in our case, we've had Varroa development officers who've played a very important role in transferring on the ground best practice, engaging directly with skills development and face-to-face engagements with beekeepers. They've assessed hive health, they've looked at Varroa mite infestations, they've taught people how to do alcohol washing or sugar shakes, or how to do soapy water washes. They've taught them how to put miticides in their hives, how to care for their colonies now that Varroa is part of the equation for beekeepers. They've done an amazing job. They've worked in a complementary way with bee biosecurity teams within each of their states. They have worked with apiary staff as well within their states. We've promoted things that have been going on within the T2M itself. And one of the really great components, if you have a scan across the Varroa.org website, is one of the legacies of our team has been the transition to management kind of Varroa management plan. It's a great big heavy spreadsheet. We encourage all of the beekeepers that we've engaged with to take one of these on board and have a look at how they can demonstrate to themselves what they're going to do once Varroa comes to them. So one of the really great things about this extension team is that is the sheer size of it. So if you just click to the next one for me. Nationally, we've had a distribution across each of the states, and it's been allocated based on the size of registered beekeepers in each of those areas. And the teams have been a fabulous addition to the T2M, because not only have we taken up the information in Train the Trainer early on in the response or in the T2M, we've also used that information as a basis for knowledge to go forth and transfer this info into the industry directly. Each of the jurisdictions have had different numbers of full-time equivalent staff. We've had around 33 videos on the ground for this time, and it has been a fantastic opportunity to reach beekeepers. So in terms of that number of people, the best way that we knew to keep track of what everybody was up to and set some goals for the team nationally, if you click to the next slide, we had key performance indicators. So the key performance for each of the teams was set roughly around three particular things, which was associations, branches, clubs. Some of those are our ARBIC member bodies. The other two were regional distribution, to make sure BDOs visited as many different areas across their state where they were operating as possible, and interactions or engagements with a particular number. So we picked about six was the number, of VDO visits per week with different beekeepers. And across the team, I'm pretty proud to say that we did very well in achieving a lot of these key performance indicators throughout the time, most of them quite early in the piece. If you go to the next slide, we've got a bit of a grab of all of the key industry groups across the country that were identified. These key groups, as Nadine mentioned, have been a really key part of connecting each of the jurisdictional Varroa Development Officer teams with beekeepers on the ground. They've been really good. They've built lots of relationships together. They've managed to reach a huge number of beekeepers through the network of this big community across Australia. And it's no small feat to get beekeepers in states where Varroa wasn't present and still maybe isn't present, to actually engage with them, to get them to do things. And I think we've got a great legacy in the knowledge that our Varroa development officers have passed on to those key industry groups to take forward into the future. Next slide. The other really amazing achievement was the regional distribution. So the first slide was June 2024. This one is December 2024. And then the final slide is the full 46 regions across the country that we've finally reached in about July or August this year. That map just shows that we didn't stay in our own backyards. All of the VDOs were required to travel. They were required to go out of their comfort zones and get into apiaries with beekeepers they'd never met before. So it's a huge achievement to see that map coloured up to show that we really did reach across the country. We did our best to engage with as many beekeepers as possible in the time that we had. We met that KPI. And the next one, please, the national reach. So this one is a really quick little dot graph. So each of the dots represents an engagement that a VDO has undertaken. The larger the circle, the more participants were at those engagements. The lighter the colour, increasing in colour like lightness, is when the engagement had a lot of messaging going on. So lots and lots of ticks in boxes for different content that was shared and different opportunities that the VDOs were able to give to the industry in those engagements. And you'll probably see, if you've ever looked at a map across Australia of all of the registered beekeepers, this map almost mimics the locations of the majority of Australia's beekeeping community, give or take a few here and there around the place. But all of those dots represent proactive engagement with an industry that has really stood out in terms of how much engagement we've received back, demanding that VDOs come and visit and come and give them a hand. If you just click to the next slide. So the national interactions, and I've got lots of numbers on this slide, so I apologise, but if you just take a look at each of the state that you're coming from, the New South Wales, Queensland, Northern Territory, South Australia, all of the teams have had, in the blue column has been their KPI, and in the orange column is actually what they've achieved. And this was just updated this morning, and we've still got a couple of months to go. And the green column is actually the number of participants. And if I take out, so we've had 29,000 odd participants meeting with VDOs over the time of the T2M. If I take out a handful of repeated engagements, we've roughly reached about 51% of the nation's registered beekeepers with really tailored hands-on skills training in a really fundamental way that has upskilled industry, that has been in the backyard of different beekeepers, out in the paddock, in the apiary, giving them hands-on skills that they need to go forward and manage Varroa. And in collaboration with the knowledge of the education program and all of the other major components of our T2M program offerings, this has been a really significant lift for industry moving forward. So I'm really proud to have that. If you go to the next one, just a quick wrap up of what types of interactions, and to summarise them, one of the bits isn't showing up on my screen, but the blue section is actually the largest part and portion of the work that VDOs have done, and that portion represents in-field and practical apiary demonstration and time. So that is a huge investment from the T2M program nationally back into the industry. I'm really, really proud to have led this extension engagement team, and I'm really proud of all the industry that have reached out either boldly or bravely to the VDOs to engage with them and to have some knowledge imparted. We've all really developed some skills here that I think the industry can be proud to say that they've been a part of. We've received a world-class extension program through this dedicated group of staff. So that is the extension engagement. Thanks.
Much appreciated, Bianca. And reaching 51% of registered beekeepers is an incredible outcome, and coupled with the education program, that's been fabulous. So really, really appreciate the work that you ladies have led and the interactions everyone's had because of that, and really hopeful that leads to a good uplift over time. I'm going to hand over now to Janine Kidston. So Janine is the Farm Chemicals Manager for New South Wales DPIRT, and she's led a lot of the negotiations with the APVMA for permits. So Janine, over to you.
Thank you, Tamara. Yeah, as Tamara mentioned, I spent a lot of time talking to the APVMA and applying and that type of thing. The reason being that can I have the first slide, please? All legal miticide treatments for Varroa must be approved by the APVMA. And so the APVMA have two ways of approving chemicals. They can issue permits, which are temporary, and the ones listed here have an expiry date on them, or they can, although companies that produce them can apply to have their products registered. So when Varroa was first detected here, one of the first things that I did was to ring the APVMA and let them know that I would be applying for a number of emergency permits to allow the use of miticides. So when it was determined that we couldn't eradicate Varroa, and then I started the process again and applied for permits that could be used by all beekeepers. And the list here is the list of permits with the permit numbers for all of the products that we currently hold permits to, and beekeepers have access to. So there's 2, 4, 6 products there, and yeah, I mean that was a really good outcome for the transition to management program. I have heard that other countries didn't have access to that number of different chemicals in different mode of action groups until sometime quite a bit longer after the transition to management, which has implications for resistance management. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is where we really start looking at a long-term solution in terms of access to chemicals. I've not only spent a lot of time working with the APVMA, but also with manufacturers and distributors of all of these miticide products and some others that are not listed here. And so the goal is to have products registered so that we don't have to keep renewing permits or changing conditions on them or any of that type of thing. And so at the moment we have APGuard, which is registered and available, and APVAR, which is registered and available. And in June, Varroa was approved for registration. And in speaking to Elanco, who produce Varroa or own Varroa, they expect to have Australian registered Varroa available in Australia by June 2026. So we'll be relying on our permits, which allow the use of New Zealand product until the registered product's available. We also have 3 other products which are in the assessment process with the APVMA. So this means that the companies that produce these 3 products, Aluancat, Formic Pro, and Apitraz, have also applied to register their products in Australia, and the APVMA are in the process of assessing those products for registration. So I would hope that we'll see these products registered. The assessment takes quite a long time, but I still would hope to see them, registration approved by the end of next year. So at that point, we'll have 6 products registered. Which is great. I've also spoken to a couple of other companies or several other companies about their products, and that are considering registration at the moment, and have had discussions with the APVMA, who offer a preliminary application process where they give the the applicants advice about how to apply and the information that they need to provide before they actually make their application, which is really helpful to registrants, particularly potential registrants who, while they have products registered in other countries, don't have product registered in Australia today. So yeah, I mean, it's looking like we're getting there in terms of registered product, which is the end goal for us in terms of access to chemicals, particularly miticides. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment, and I'll hand back to Tamara.
You're on mute, Tamara. Tamara.
Someone had to do it. I'm so sorry. Of all the times to make that mistake. Look, thank you so much, Janine. And I was just saying to myself that it's not unexpected that we've had quite a few questions about the chemical side of things. And yeah, we might come back to them in the Q&A chat, and otherwise Janine might just answer some on the run. But thank you very much. I'm going to hand over now to Denny Lafleur. I'm sure most of you know Denny. Denny's been leading some of the other projects that ARBIC have been leading, including the Code of Practice and the Biosecurity Manual updates. So Denny, over to you.
Thanks, Tamara. I'm glad you did the mute thing, not me, straight up. I did, just because we are running a little bit ahead of time, I did want to take the opportunity just to talk about, which is something we don't talk about enough, is how the program's been paid for. The program, as Chris alluded to, has a number of affected parties involved in it who are all paying their share. The honeybee industry pays our share through our honey levies. So we're paying $1.1 million for the program, which is 1.1% of the cost. But it's really important people understand that this is paid for by honey levies. And if you produce and sell more than 1,500 kilos of honey a year, you're legally obliged to be paying the honey levy through the federal government. We know there's between 1,400 and 1,500 levy payers out of the 47,000 registered beekeepers in the country. So we've got a few people doing the heavy lifting for a lot here. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. Thanks, Tamara. And I can move on to talking about what I'm supposed to be talking about, is a couple of key industry documents that we were able to get funding for through the Transition and Management Program to update. Arguably, perhaps two of the most important documents in our industry being the Biosecurity Code of Practice and the Biosecurity Manual. These documents, if you're not aware of them, are must-reads if you're a beekeeper. And we've been able to just update them to reflect where we're at with Varroa. Now, next slide, please. I'm going to start with the Biosecurity Manual. It's probably the least recognised document that we have, but an incredibly valuable one. It's a really big document, but has a lot of information in it. So it has things in there like the 7 easy ways to protect your hive, with a step through those 7 steps. It lists all the exotic pests that we know about at the moment globally that we don't want on our shores, that we're still trying to protect our honeybee industry from. It lists some of our established pests across the country as well, and talks about the biology of those pests as well. Next slide, please. It also talks about and gives you tips about keeping bees healthy, steps you through controlling those pests and diseases that it describes. But it even gets down to the level of step by step through inspecting hives and doing surveillance as well. A few of the key updates to this document that we've been able to do is update it to reflect Varroa's now endemic, or considered endemic, in Australia. Despite it being free in many states and territories, it's nationally considered endemic now. So this document reflects that and talks more than what it did about how to manage Varroa and the options you've got. It also explores things like biosecurity and quality assurance programs that are in our industry. And right at the back, there's a whole bunch of fact sheets that are really, really useful that step through each of those key pests and diseases that we know about in a lot of detail, that can be pulled out and used by association and clubs for extension and to have on your coffee table, because that's just what you want to read when people come around. So a really key document. The consultation process we went through for both of these documents was circulating them across our industry contacts through our member bodies, the peak associations in each state. and through all of the jurisdictions, and then bringing that feedback back and through a consultant being able to incorporate that into the document. Both of these documents have been nationally agreed to by our ARBIC member bodies. It's also been agreed to by the National Plant Health Committee, which is all the jurisdiction chief plant officers as well. So it's all been nationally endorsed and in place now. Next slide, please. So what is arguably the most important document in the industry is the Code of Practice. So the Code of Practice is a industry developed manual or code that was developed way back in 2015, involving beekeepers. There was funded through our levies again to develop this, and there was a roadshow around the country to try and get the code of practice to a point that was acceptable to the majority of people in the industry. We've never been able to get the code to something that everyone agrees to. A lot of people have had to make compromises. So a lot of people don't think it's tough enough. A lot of people think it's too tough. So it's about, with this code, trying to find the middle road. So in 2015, it was developed and adopted, and it's supposed to be the framework that every beekeeper can use to achieve best practice biosecurity. In 2022, it was updated using our levy funding again to update that. And then, of course, in 2022, just as we finished updating it, we found Varroa. And so we were able to negotiate, once it was determined non-eradicable, to incorporate some funding in the T2M to do another update of the code to reflect the changing landscape we're operating in. This code took a lot more consultation than we expected it to. We went through the same process as the biosecurity manual and took it around, spread it around the country to all of our peak industry associations. That was fed down to the branches, as well as through all the jurisdictions. It actually took 3 rounds of consultation and nearly 12 months to get this one right. We had a lot of suggestions in there, a lot of controversial suggestions that had to keep going back to consultation to try and find that middle road. We think we've found that middle road with that now, where we've got the majority of people that are providing feedback agreeing with where it is. Next slide, please. So I'll just talk about the material changes to the code of practice. So we've made some changes in there to obviously reflect Varroa's status now, changed recommendations in there around surveillance and monitoring. Importantly, changed the record keeping requirements to include both monitoring of Varroa, those actions that you're doing, as well as recording treatments or any sort of treatments you're doing for Varroa. We've updated a lot of the jurisdictional contacts that were a bit outdated, and the acts that govern beekeeping in each of those states, because there's been some biosecurity acts updated recently. But most importantly, and perhaps where the controversy came in, is Part C of the code, and which used to refer to anyone that had 50 hives or more would need to comply with Part C. After much consultation back and forth with many different organisations in the industry, the middle road was to now amend that to apply to anyone who manages 20 hives or more would need to comply with Part C of the code. So Part C of the code requires beekeepers to do a few little extra things in their day-to-day biosecurity practices. So that includes demonstrating a minimum level of biosecurity knowledge. And that could be something as simple as completing the biosecurity online training course module through Plant Health Australia, the BOLT course, or attending some of the more intense trainings that are available around the country. It's also about completing an annual honey test for American foul brood, which in some jurisdictions is a requirement anyway, but also doing an annual declaration of compliance, which is a self-compliance by beekeepers, to be able to say that they are compliant with the code. This, we believe, will become more important now Varroa's here. We think pollination dependent growers will be looking for that compliance declaration of the code of practice as evidence that you are managing your biosecurity obligations, particularly Varroa. So it's going to become more and more important as we move forward. Next slide, please. So those 2 key documents was a small part of what ARBIC did. You heard all the work Bianca was doing in the response. We have delivered some other programs as well that probably aren't quite at the point where we can extend the message yet, but we'll have them finished before the end of the program. But these two documents have now been adopted. They're in play. Most of the jurisdictions are either looking at how they can incorporate into legislation more, or have just adopted it completely. So you'll need to check. But they can be found broadly across all of your normal places you go looking for information. So we have both of these documents on the ARBIC website. They're both on the Plant Health Australia website, at varroa.org website, and at just about every jurisdictional department's website as well, where they have the honeybee information. These documents are sitting there. If you haven't picked them up and read them in the past, it's a must do to really understand your obligations and what best practice looks like in terms of biosecurity. Back to you, Tamara.
Thanks very much, Danny. Much appreciated. I'm just going to quickly recap now on some of the other key aspects of the program that have been undertaken by the team in the background. And so I shouldn't say in the background, because they are quite substantial pieces of work. So Danny mentioned the biosecurity online training modules. So PHA are working in the background to update those modules to make sure they comply with the amendments to the Code of Practice and the biosecurity manual that Danny mentioned. We've also run a national virus baselining study. So during this project, 1,209 hives across the nation had bees collected from them. We took those samples proportionally from each state, depending on the number of bees being kept in each state. And I just wanted to shout out to any of the beekeepers online who submitted samples of those bees. So those sample results individually have been provided back to the jurisdictions now. So hopefully you've all got your individual results. But if not, reach out to your jurisdiction and certainly they will be able to share them with you. So we took those bee samples and we tested those for 8 viruses. It was quite an extensive process, and we were really grateful that there's been no evidence of the major exotic bee viruses, so deformed wing, slow bee paralysis virus and acute bee paralysis virus. There was no evidence of any of them found nationally in any of the samples that were collected. In contrast, that project did find that there was quite a high prevalence, or a very high prevalence, of infection with a lot of the endemic viruses that have already been detected in Australia, and we knew were here. So there's a full results from that study, a summary as well as a full page of results for that on varroa.org as well, which is our program website. So if anyone wants to go have a look at that, that will be able to give you a lot more information about the national virus baselining. But again, thanks to those that submitted results. You might be also aware that each of the states, or most of the states now, have a jurisdictional heat map. So those maps map the spread of Varroa with the aim of giving people a bit of a heads up as to when it might be near them, when to prepare, but also just to sort of track how it's tracking across the state. So they've been really helpful for all industries to date. However, what we found through the course of T2M is that the New South Wales heat map started to get unreliable. I think the number of reports coming in started to drop off a little bit, and the positivity rate increased significantly. We found that Varroa was known to be in areas that it hadn't been reported, and so though we looked at some metrics and we decided to take the New South Wales heat map down, as it's broadly considered to be across the state now. The metrics that we came up with to work out whether that heat map could be relied upon in the future have now been shared with all of the other jurisdictions. So hopefully that will provide a basis for each of those jurisdictions to make that decision as to when they think that that heat map loses its integrity. So I would really encourage any of you beekeepers outside of New South Wales to continue to report Varroa. In New South Wales, report it the first time you find it. But yeah, please report, because we rely on those reports to be able to track the spread and then make more informed decisions for your colleagues and those pollination dependent industries as well. A large component, or a big component, of T2M has been trying to help the pollination dependent industries as well as the beekeeping industry. So T2M has been slanted towards the beekeeping industries, with the idea being that those the resilience in the beekeeping industry would ensure the productivity and ongoing availability of bees for those pollination reliant industries. We did, however, have a pollination industry coordinator employed as part of the program for 12 months. So Rebecca Sloan was with us for that 12 months, and during that time she prepared a number of fact sheets and guides to help growers prepare for the impacts of Varroa and the increased reliance on and competition for managed hives that might come as it spreads. So one of the key resources that Beck has produced is a pollination guide. It provides practical advice on how to provide a safe environment for bees and beekeepers, as well as advice on how to assess if the bees are healthy and productive within those farms, as well as a template pollination contract, which we think is going to become critically important moving forward as the demand for pollination services increases and beekeepers are under such pressure. A lot of this information we think will become increasingly important as the feral hives are continued to be impacted. We don't think that, again, that's going to happen during the course of T2M, but we do hope that those documents provide a good legacy to support those pollination-dependent industries as those impacts of Varroa start to be felt a bit more broadly. There was a lot of other work done as part of the program. It's been a massive program of work, but we're on a really short time frame tonight. So for now, I might hand over to the states to give us some updates on their plans going forward. And you'll be glad to know we're running a bit ahead of time. I was a bit worried about fitting in everybody, but I'm going to hand over to James Sheehan now from Western Australia. So James, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Tamara. Yeah, great shows, and I appreciate it so far. So I just want to start with a big shout to the WA Varroa team, and just acknowledge their work and depth of commitment. We've got about 5 part-time staff, and our coordinator Kate, who's just done an amazing job. Getting out there amongst the state. So despite being a small team, we've managed to thus far engage with over 1,000 beekeepers, and we're hoping by end of program we'll visit or engage with over 25% of the 4,500 beekeepers across Western Australia. I sort of take my hat off. Most of our engagements have been, in field visits and in-hive demonstrations and mentoring, and being very well received across WA. Thanks for the slide. Appreciate it. Our industry is certainly, sorry, a picture of Kate quickly. She loves the spotlight, so I take my hat off to Kate. Industry has certainly dovetailed into across the program. They've helped to magnify our comms and get more bums on seats at training events and workshops, and certainly helped to authenticate us and our works. Another part of industry being the Ag Produce Commission also provided funds to supply alcohol wash kits as part of our work, and very important to our surveillance effort. So although WA has fewer beekeepers than many other states, our challenge is our geographic spread and logistical challenge to cover that space. I just want to say out loud, we certainly appreciate you teaming up with the NT team, Ben Carley, and helping to connect with our beekeepers in the state's northern horticultural region. So what's in WA's future? Well, we certainly remain committed to keeping Varroa out for as long as possible, and while we recognise. While we certainly recognise the challenges we'll face when it's eventually detected, we certainly continue to uphold the principle of early detection gives us the best opportunity to make informed decisions when that time comes. DPWA certainly continues to work closely with industry to refine our emergency response strategy, clearly outlining our response options, triggers and operational intent. We place a strong value on our hard border, and support the strict surveillance and import controls on all potential carriers for Varroa to WA. DPIRD also maintains a statewide, a broad statewide surveillance network, which includes about 44 central hives, and we've shifted some of that focus to our domestic pathways. We're proactively undertaking Varroa inspections in all our work, whether it be at pollination events, at trade inspections, or whenever we're catching up with beekeepers. We're certainly continuing to prioritise a full-time bee engagement officer, or often referred to as our bee biosecurity officer, which is partially funded under the National Bee Biosecurity Program. Their role will certainly take on the T2M legacy work, promoting the bee biosecurity code practice, raising public awareness, strengthening cooperation, and reinforcing the frequency for beekeepers to complete surveillance and make reports. The bee team also has a close relationship or alliance with the Bee Industry Council WA, BICWA, and the WA Apis Society to promote best practice and equip beekeepers with the knowledge, tools, and mindset to help protect WA. We also support BICWA in the deployment of their bee sentry units, which are stations equipped with cameras and real-time data capability along our high-risk pathways and freight endpoints to support early detection. We certainly hope this technology will provide another important tool to supplement the early warning alerts and strengthen our frontline defence against Varroa. Thanks from WA, and I'll pass over to Rob in Queensland.
Thanks, James. And also a massive thank you to Tamara and the National Varroa Mite management team, who've delivered exceptional work over the last 2 years. That's on top of the work delivered by Chris and the response team early on. The information provided by the program has really been invaluable to the jurisdictions like Queensland, so thank you very much. The current state of play in Queensland is that we've got just under 450 infested premises within about 19 local government areas. The majority have been found across southeast Queensland, from the Gold Coast up to the Sunshine Coast and out to Toowoomba. We've also had about 650 reports of subsequent to a secondary positive result. So just recently, we're starting to notice a much higher level of positive results being reported. Last month in November, 30% of all reports were positive. That's up from 20% the previous month, and it was only 10% a few months ago. So a great big thank you to all the beekeepers that have been submitting their results, both positive and negative. We've had nearly 4,000 results submitted since our first detection in Queensland back in March. So I can confirm, like the other jurisdictions, that Queensland, we are expecting to keep our Varroa development officers on until the 30th of January. Just flagging the Queensland Government compulsory closure period runs from 25 December to 1 January, though, and we're anticipating fairly limited resources from 21 December to 2 January. Biosecurity Queensland will continue to support Queensland beekeepers via the Varroa Mite Innovation and Resilience Initiative, or the VMIRI program, which I manage. Our program for the collaborative action to manage Varroa Mite is funded until 30th of June 2027. So we've recently recruited a full-time engagement officer up until the end of the program, who will continue to deliver video-style support to Queensland beekeepers. Sarah Hickman started in this role back in September. Biosecurity Queensland has also re-established a bee biosecurity officer since October of this year, and Tonya Johnson's currently acting in that role whilst longer-term recruitment is finalised over the coming weeks. In the regulatory space, we've progressed an emergency prohibited matter declaration to delist Varroa destructor under the Biosecurity Act. That occurred on the 12th of April, and we're hoping to finalise further changes to the biosecurity regulation in the coming weeks. So this includes removing the Varroa Mite biosecurity zone and the need for biosecurity instrument permits for interstate movement. So we're also moving Varroa destructor to Category 2 restricted matter, which means Varroa is still a notifiable pest in the first instance, and that reporting obligation can be discharged by using our B123 reporting system. There's also some large areas of industry consultation currently underway as part of our prohibited and restricted matter review and the biosecurity regulation sunset review, which are looking at biosecurity legislation more broadly. Queensland beekeepers can actually expect to receive some correspondence from us on some of these changes in the very near future in December. So the Varroa program is also collaborating with Queensland beekeepers to better understand their needs post-Varroa Mite. We've brought elements of the industry together via the Bee Biosecurity Roundtable events, which were run this year, and the Bee Biosecurity Roundtable Advisory Group, which met for the first time in October. This group represents stakeholders from science, beekeeping, honey packing, pollination-reliant industries, national agencies, and Biosecurity Queensland staff, which will continue to meet regularly to discuss strategy implementation and the progress for our program. The Queensland DPI has also launched a $500,000 Community Bee Innovation Fund, or CBIF, to support education, monitoring and industry-led preparedness. So grants are available for local organisations, research groups and industry bodies to develop new tools, training programs and community-based surveillance models to help Varroa Mite and build long-term industry resilience. So in the first round, 4 successful recipients collectively received $150,000 delivering education, training and management activities to support beekeeping and pollination-reliant industries. And round 2 of the CBIF, which features our largest pool of money, $250,000, we recently received 16 applications, which are currently being finalised, and those announcements are expected in the coming weeks. So please announce too that round 3 is expected to open in January of next year, which will include at least $100,000 of additional funding. And just finally, we're also undertaking stakeholder behavioural analysis and have engaged an external provider to measure the progress of our engagement and opportunities to improve our engagement up till 30 June 2027. So the Varroa program is currently reviewing the first year findings and evaluating changes that are required moving forward. So our Varroa program remains focused on engaging with beekeeping community to provide up-to-date information on Varroa management, increase community engagement and participation in Varroa Mite, and to jointly develop management strategies to minimise the impact of Varroa. So working together with the Queensland industry, we really hope to reduce the impact of Varroa Mite on productivity for Queensland beekeepers and pollination-reliant industries. So if you want more information in Queensland, contact can be made by emailing varroa@dpi.qld.gov.au or calling our call centre within Queensland on 132523. So with that, I'll now hand over to Amelia Richards, who's going to tell you what they're up to in Victoria.
Thanks, Rob. And thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to share what's going to be happening in Victoria post the National T2M program. My name's Amelia Richards, and I'm the Varroa Transition Coordinator of the Varroa Transition Program, which is being delivered out of Agriculture Victoria. With the impacts of Varroa set to become increasingly evident over the coming months and years, the Victorian Government recognised the need for continued investment and transition support for Victoria's apiary and pollination-dependent industries. So this program is funded for 2 years and will run until the 30th of June 2027. It's going to build on the strong foundation laid by the National T2M program to provide that continued support to the apiary industry as well as pollination-dependent industries and that adaptation to the impacts of Varroa. The key focus and outcome we're seeking through the program is ensuring that sustainable apiary industry in Vic and secure pollination services for the broader Victorian ag sector following Varroa Mite's establishment. So Varroa obviously will significantly change how growers access pollination services, and the program will continue to provide transition support through engagement and extension with the apiary industry, but it will also include a focus on preparing pollination-dependent industries and the broader ag sector for the changes associated with Varroa. We're taking a program approach with a number of different streams delivered across AgVic in a coordinated way. So there'll be a focus on apiculture sector transition, so engaging with the apiary industry to strengthen their preparedness and adaptation to Varroa impacts, and enhancing bee biosecurity through that education and building that industry capability in the management of Varroa. There'll also be a broader ag sector transition focus as well, so extension and engagement with pollination-dependent industries to ensure they understand what their pollination needs are, how to access them. So linking in the apiary and the growers to ensure really positive pollination outcomes for both sides of the coin. But there'll also be extension and engagement with the apiary industry to support their business transition and resilience to the changes of Varroa. We're going to have a policy focus as well, so undertaking research to better understand the impacts of Varroa to the industry and that broader risk to the Victorian economy, so we can use that evidence to scope really effective transition support mechanisms and tools and help us partner with industry as we navigate this change. Chemical use regulation is also going to be something we'll be looking into, so ensuring safe chemical use and monitoring that as well. So that will involve working with industry to really promote a risk management approach to chemical use and provide assurance to the public that bee products are safe to use. We'll be looking at addressing government responsibilities for regulation and market access, and have a technical expertise in national coordination focus as well to ensure that harmonisation at the national level in Victoria and provide overarching technical advice to any structural or policy changes occurring in AgVic. So we'll have a real focus in the delivery of this program and collaboration and capability building and managing Varroa, and taking a whole of ag sector view to navigate the changes associated with Varroa and really minimize those to ease that transition. So that is everything from me. Thank you all for your time, and I'll hand over now to Adrian in South Australia.
Thanks, Amelia. Appreciate that. So South Australia, our videos started a little bit later than the Eastern States videos. They started in November of 2024. So they'll be actually extended right out to January 2026. Within South Australia, we've got the 2.5 FTEs of Varroas, development officers. And to date, they've actually done over 900 engagements involving over 1,700 beekeepers in our state. We've had 2 detections so far, 2 main detections in South Australia. One was done in September of 2025 in the Riverland region. But our most recent one was only a couple of weeks ago in late November in the Limestone Coast region. And that detection has now expanded to 5 further detections in the Adelaide Hills, the Limestone Coast region, and also down in the Fleurieu as well. This is obviously a concerning time for South Australian beekeepers, but PIRS is looking to continue the support that they've been providing for the last 12 months to beekeepers in preparing for management of Varroa now that it's in South Australia. As I said, the videos are finishing at the end of the national program, but PIRS is actually continuing their support out to June of 2026. 2026 next year. And we're also investigating how we can actually go about getting the funding to extend the engagement officers within the apiary unit out to a much further time frame. And also one of our VDOs is now actually also transferred into the BBO role. So they're another engagement option for beekeepers within South Australia. And that BBO is already out to October of 2026. We'll obviously be implementing the permits as they come through and have access to the acaricides for South Australian beekeepers. We've asked that South Australia be placed onto the permits, and we can also access the existing registered products within South Australia. At this time, we're still investigating our recent detection, and we're actually expecting additional sites, etc., to be discovered, well, not discovered, but confirmed within the coming weeks. But we still have plenty of time for beekeepers to be prepared, because At the present time, we've only been finding low numbers in the majority of detections of mites. We've only got one real high mite load, and that's down in the Waipinga area. So yeah, it's a concerning time for South Australia, but we still have videos here to actually support our beekeepers. Thank you, everybody, and I'll be handing over to Carson from Tasmania.
Thank you, Adrian. And thank you to Bianca, Tamara, and the entire T2M team for all the support and development offered to Tasmanian beekeepers and Biosecurity Tasmania via the T2M. Tasmania, just as a snapshot, was originally meant to have 2 videos for a 12-month period, but being able to find a second one for up north, they asked me if I'd be comfortable handling the whole state. In a moment of madness, I said yes and haven't regretted a moment of it. Over the past 15 months, nearly 50% of registered beekeepers in Tasmania have attended a workshop or been personally visited by me across the state. While I've been the only one in the state in this role, I have worked closely with our Senior Apiary Officer, Julie Lupia, and Senior Inspector, Phil Godman, as well as working very closely with the T2M team. Being in Tasmania and being an unaffected jurisdiction, our goal is the same as everyone else's, and is to maintain focus on staying Varroa free for as long as possible. We have 2 guiding groups and documents, one of which is the Tasmanian Varroa Mite Action Plan, which sort of outlines everything that we're doing in terms of preparation, how we would respond to it in the case of a detection, and working alongside the Varroa Mite Task Force, which is a diverse stakeholder group and is critical for our engagement activities. Those 2 things help guide our priorities. A quick snapshot of those is we have an industry or an import risk analysis report due next year that's been out for public consultation, and it considers actions to enable safe trade in queen bees, as this potentially reduces the risk of illegal imports into the state. We'll move from a general biosecurity direction to permanent import requirements that balance risk with least trade restrictive controls. Review barrier inspections and make improvements to our detector dogs' capacity to detect bees at air and seaports, and prioritize checking shipments from high-risk areas such as New South Wales, which are currently being targeted, but Queensland and Vic have been added to the list. So we'll make sure that every ship is checked coming into Tasmania. Moving on from that is our response preparedness. So development is continuing internally following meetings held with the Varroa Mite Task Force. The workshops have resulted in the development of aims, objectives, and potential response activities aligned with diverse stakeholder views, not just beekeepers, but also pollination-dependent industries. Undertake scenario analysis and pre-plan different scenarios in the event of a detection. Scenarios are workshopped during those task force meetings. Undertake preparedness activities, such as simulation exercises. Biosecurity Tasmania has an ongoing Varroa preparedness working group and is continuing to develop exercises there. Preparing and purchasing a stockpile of equipment for immediate needs, such as the first few weeks. Continuing training of industry liaison officers within the Tasmanian beekeeping industry. Expansion of our Sentinel Hive program beyond the funding of the NBPSP, making sure all of our air and seaports are covered, and moving the program entirely internally to ensure consistent and timely surveillance. Continue training and developing Biosecurity Tasmania staff and surveillance and monitoring of Sentinel hives at ports and best practice in response to suspect reports. Consider and develop pathways for reimbursement costs in the event of a detection. Our aim of a response to a detection will be to minimize impacts on the Tasmanian beekeeper and pollination-dependent industries, communities, and the environment while preserving the opportunity to eradicate if technically feasible. In addition to that, we have research and funding available through AgriGrowth. There's a survey to update the bee futures data, incorporating analysis of who pollinates what, where, and when. A trajectory of industry growth over the next 35 years to quantify the size and impact and market implications of a world without Varroa and a world with one. We have a Tasmanian beekeeping survey, which identifies the needs and opportunities within the industry and helps direct funding and industry support. They also continue to work with stakeholders to develop a more detailed plan for pollination security before Varroa mite establishes. For example, can native bees, bumblebees, and alternative pollinators such as hoverflies fill in any resulting pollinator shortfall? That's it for now. There's a million more things we could talk about, but that's a high-level overview of it. So I'll now pass it on to Alex Russell in New South Wales. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Carson. The New South Wales Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development is developing a program of new activities to help beekeeping and pollination-reliant industries to manage Varroa mite and its impacts following the end of the National Varroa Mite Management Program. That program is going to include new resources and activities in biosecurity extension, compliance, education and training, and research and development. We're still in the process of finalising the details of that program, but to give you some sense of the sort of priorities that we've identified in consultation with industry, they include helping beekeepers achieve effective management of Varroa and other pests and diseases of honeybees, achieving compliance with the Australian Honeybee Industry Biosecurity Code of Practice, helping the industry to develop the skills they need to attract and retain the skilled workers they need, ensuring the industry has access to effective Varroa control products and is able to use these safely and to manage the risk of miticide resistance, developing protocols and procedures to ensure we detect miticide resistance as soon as it occurs and can manage that risk, helping pollination-reliant industries implement strategies to achieve the pollination outcomes they need, and developing tools that will help queen breeders, help the queen breeding sector identify and breed from queens that are more resistant to Varroa. In the meantime, we'll continue to provide a comprehensive program of our existing activities, which are delivered by our bee biosecurity officers, our compliance team, Tokau College's bee education team, our research and industry development team, and of course our apiary sites program, which is working to improve access for beekeeping on public lands. Our honeybee program is, of course, also supported by our diagnostic services and farm chemicals team. And look, while I have this opportunity, and before I hand back to you, Tamara, I'd just like to say a few things on behalf of the New South Wales Department. And the first is to say a massive thank you to the Transition to Management team for the amazing job you've done of delivering this program, including our colleagues in other states and territories and our industry partners. It's been an amazing effort, and I'm very grateful for the really positive and collaborative way that you've worked with us to deliver this program. I'd also like to thank the beekeepers, all of you that are watching this webinar, for the really positive way that you've engaged with the program, and the feedback that you've provided that has allowed us to modify and adjust the program as we've gone along to make sure that we're doing the best we can to meet your needs. And finally, Tamara, at the risk of embarrassing you at the end of the webinar, I'd like to provide my personal thanks for the amazing job that you have done in leading this program. I think you've done an exceptional job and of bringing together a really broad and diverse group of partners to help deliver the project and of stakeholders that we're working to support. So thank you. Back to you.
Thanks, Alex.
Sorry.
Thanks. Yeah. Timing. And thank you everyone for your reactions. I appreciate it. It's been an absolutely thrilling journey. And anyway, look, we are running ahead of time, which is incredible. We've been sort of cracking the whip at everyone saying we're going to be really pushed for time, and somehow we've ended up in front, which hopefully means that we'll get a nice early mark. It's well past my bedtime at least. We've had a heap of questions in the chat. A lot of them have been around Aluan cap and the time frame for registration. So Janine, I'm hoping you might be around. Are you free to answer some questions for us? So the first one, it's number 3 in our Word document. Is there any insight, and I know we've answered this in the chat, but also it would be good to probably have a bit of a discussion. Have we got any insight as to when Aluan cap will be registered, or how the emergency use permit is going?
Yeah, there's two questions in there. The registration, yeah, I'm aware that it was submitted in early 2025, and that that the normal projected timeframe for registration is usually 15 months. However, there's a couple of things that can play into that in terms of delaying it. One is if the APVMA have to go back to the registrant with questions for clarification or more information, and that can make it take a bit longer. And the other thing is if the APVMA are running behind in their time schedules, then that can mean that it'll take a little bit longer as well. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that I suppose that was a good starting point was that we saw that Varroa took quite a long time. My understanding of the reason for that is that Varroa, where it's registered in other countries, is not allowed for use with supers on, and so there was consideration of new data in that space. So that doesn't apply to Alu cat, but it's difficult to predict exactly when it might be available. It'd be nice to see it by the middle of next year, but I can't make any promises because I'm not doing the work.
Not the APVMA.
No.
Yep.
In terms of the permit, a permit actually requires a lot of similar assessment to a registration application, and so where the APV may have received a registration application and a permit application for the same product at the same time, they tend to rely on the same assessments. So I can't predict when that permit might be issued, but I'd expect to see a permit issued before the product is actually like the registered product available. But that's just me speculating.
No, that's fine. That seems to be the best advice that we have at the moment. So thank you very much for that. And there's a heap more questions on chemicals, so don't be going too far. The next question, Denny, I think will be for yourself. So this one is, how can we access hard copies of the Code of Practice and the biosecurity manuals?
Thanks, Tamara. So the Code of Practice and biosecurity manuals in the budget were to do the update and consultation. We ended up having to do a lot more consultation than we expected, and because we were using a consultant, we burned through that budget pretty quick. We also don't normally we would fund those type of prints through our levies, but as I've been explaining to everyone around the country, that we are spending more money than we are collecting in levies, so we don't have any money in that to do printed copies either. We are talking to jurisdictions about whether we can do print runs within each jurisdiction through our bee biosecurity officers and have them distributed out. But we also have some pretty proactive associations. Queensland Beekeepers Association have been successful in a grant through the Queensland government for MIRI program to have some printed off, and I know the Amateur Beekeepers Association will be looking at printing some off later next year. So at this stage, we just don't have a big box full of copies to hand out, but we are working on it.
Thank you very much, Danny. And yeah, that's a big thing to note is about the budget. So we've had budgets for each of these programs of work under the Transition to Management program, and everyone's done really well sticking under budget, and it's been a huge achievement as well. So, yep, good call out. We've got lots of questions to get through. So there's one that's currently not answered. Janine, I might just go to yourself, and sorry, no notice on this one. Clancy and Carolina has said, may I ask if Roxanne will also be considered?
It'll definitely be considered. At the moment, we haven't seen an application for it, but it's a product, I think, that belongs to Vita Pharma, and I know that they've just registered Varoxan in the US and in New Zealand, if they haven't, if it's not approved in New Zealand, it's in the process, I think. One of the things about miticides and miticides that'll be approved in Australia is that they need the facilities where they're manufactured, and all stages of manufacture need to be accredited under good manufacturing practice. And so, yeah, if that's in place, then registration of Varoxan in Australia would be able to go ahead if the manufacturer decides to register in Australia.
Thanks, Janine. And we've had a couple of questions around the difference between oxalic acid and apibioxol. Would you mind just giving everyone a bit of an answer? Sorry, while I've got you on the screen, I promise I'll find someone else to question next about why it's important to use the registered products.
Yeah, there are a lot of generic or industrial oxalic acid products. Some of them have been tested and found to carry heavy metals, and their industrial oxalic acid is generally used to clean wood and metal, like your old shovel before you put a new handle on it. And so, if there's heavy metals in those products, then that doesn't really matter. But when it comes to producing food, we don't want heavy metals in our honey. And beekeepers don't want heavy metals contaminating their hives either. And so the best way to ensure that there aren't any contaminants is to use an approved product. Aside from that, products approved by the APVMA are the only ones that are legally allowed to be used for Varroa control.
Thanks very much, Janine. Much appreciated. There's heaps more chemical questions coming in as well, but I promised you a break. So, Bianca, I might flick to you for this next question. We've had a question come in around looking at the diversity in weather with regards to like high rainfall in the eastern states and high to very high temperatures in the middle and the west. Would you be able to just talk to us about what options people have got when they're looking at those regional weather variations?
Sure can. So I think that Wendy is really referring to what we've been teaching beekeepers all this time is all about IPM, or integrated pest management. We did a couple of webinars, especially about the different methodologies behind why IPM is really good. Talking about the different temperatures in your area where you keep bees, Wendy, is a really important starting point for looking at managing Varroa. What we recommend, I guess, for this program is to jump back into the varroa.org.au website. Take a look at the tab at the top that talks about manage Varroa. There is a bunch of resources in there. It talks you through all of the different options for integrated pest management methods. And on top of that, there's also a section that the videos help develop, which is a treatment plan for Varroa. And it doesn't necessarily give you everything you're asking for. It's actually expecting you to do some homework about where you are, what you want from your honeybee colonies, and how to implement some of the measures that you'll take in the future. And that will include things to understand about low rainfall, high rainfall, different temperatures, and all of the different bits and pieces around how you and your skills in managing bees will come into play once you start to reach a threshold in your colonies of Varroa levels. And what you can do in that management plan is actually go back into the program's website as well and have a look at all of the different chemical options and what they mean for you specifically. It's a really great tool that you can manipulate to your own benefit. And if you're that way inclined, you can go the extra degree and include the cost benefit analysis in that particular spreadsheet. Hope that answers the question.
Thanks very much, Bianca. Look, those treatment plan templates that are on the varroa.org website, and they'll be available from other sources, hopefully as our program winds up as well, have been one of the most accessed documents, if not the most accessed document on varroa.org. You can individualise plans for yourself, and while you've got a small opportunity still to get videos to come help you write them up, but there's some good information on them about how to use them as well, and they've been a great asset for everyone. There's just been a comment in the Q&A chat as well from Peter Lawton that said brood breaks really do work. He'd lost a queen. The replacement was infertile. The new one was fertile overall, 6 weeks without brood. At the last alcohol wash last week, there was no Varroa at all. So that's a great result. And anything we can do to try and maintain the efficacy of our chemicals as long as possible is absolutely amazing. So there was just a question on the screen that somebody's answered about Varroa. So, Janine, I'm not sure if you've had any discussions with the APVMA or the chemical company about Varroa at all, but the question has come in saying, is there any update about access to Varroa in Australia this year or next? It's a contraception for Varroa mites. It's syrup, for those that don't know, fed in winter, and it basically sterilises those Varroa mites. And this will be the last question, so you other presenters can breathe easy now. And Janine, apologies.
I must admit that I don't know much about Varroa, and I think Danny answered that question, so maybe he knows a bit more about it than I do.
Danny, go you.
Thanks,
Good
Janine.
pass, Janine.
That was a classic football hand pass. Yeah, Varroa is a company, the manufacturer is called Greenlight. They're a Canadian-based company. We've been talking to them as ARBIC for a few years now when they were in the early development stage. Yes, they have got their product recently registered in parts of the US. It's a technology that uses RNAi, interferon technology, that interferes with the genetics of the mites and prevents them or reduces their ability to breed moving forward. So it doesn't have great ability to knock mite numbers down quickly, but it has great ability at holding mite numbers at a level. We've connected them up with a researcher in Australia who's got ethics approval to do field trials, just looking for funding at the moment. But of interest is that we have also been talking to another couple of companies in Australia that are developing very similar technology, still RNAi technology, very similar to Varroa, but they claim it to be actually more efficacious. So we are working with those two companies as well to try and give them a hurry up to try and get to market. They might be able to get to market quicker than what Varroa will. If Varroa, the manufacturer's Greenlight, decide to register in Australia, they are going to have to go through the same process through the APVMA, which we know is very slow. So we know even if they do choose to come to Australia, it will still be a long time away before we're able to see that product available.
Thanks very much, Danny. That's much appreciated. There's been a few more questions coming in the chat, and they relate as well to our the wrap up that I'm about to do. So we're a little bit ahead of time, and I'm hoping everyone's grateful to get a bit of an earlier night than they were expecting. So some of the questions that have been coming in are around, will access to this webinar be available? Yes, we are recording this webinar. I'm sorry, again, I should have mentioned that at the start. I jumped in a bit quickly. We will share that with everybody after tonight, so you can go back and see what's been said. If it is a lot of information to take in. There is another question there as well about the long-term plan for the website varroa.org and the resources. So I've lost my notes. We know that, obviously I mentioned earlier that the legacy pieces are really important. So I'm planning to hand over editable versions of all the documents that have been prepared as part of this program to all of the state associations and the jurisdictions and the affected parties, so that they are available and can be updated by those groups, and hopefully become a good document for those groups to work from as our knowledge of Varroa in the landscape continues to develop. Post sort of T2M. Varroa.org itself, we will scale that website back from January, but we will leave it up until the end of 2026. At that point, we'll shut it down. But in the interim, the access to all of those resources will be available, as I mentioned, through ARBIC, the state jurisdiction, like each of the jurisdictions, as well as those state associations. So if something goes missing off that website, please reach out to your state association or to ARBIC and or your affected party industry body, and they should be able to point you in the right direction for where that might be. We don't want to lose the resources that that have been developed as part of this program. So look, Despite all the work that we've done to date, we know that there are still knowledge gaps. One of those that I just sort of mentioned is the rate of the loss of ferrules and what that will mean for the pollination industries as it continues to spread. Like, we've got some pretty good verbal ideas, but we don't have that scientifically known yet, and we know that that's a massive gap. There's plenty of others as well, and we could continue to work in this space forever, but the Transition to Management program aims to be a good starting point to help industries transition. And I guess it's now time for us to transition out and hand over as much as we could. I hope, and I'm sure that the rest of the T2M team and everyone else that's been involved does, that we've left a legacy of work which can be further developed by those ongoing people that will take ownership. And as I mentioned, those resources will be shared. We hope that the work we've done really helps. And again, I really wanted to shout out to the team, everyone that's been involved for their contributions, all of the industry people that have lent in, given us feedback, spread the word, submitted sampling results, submitted the finding of Varroa in their hives, or even negatives, any reporting. It's just been fabulous, the amount of support we've had from all of the industries, but the beekeeping industry particularly have really lent in. We've got some really skilled up people across the nation now, the contract trainers, all of the VDOs, leaning on them. They're still being the bee communities post T2M. It was very intentional to train people up nationally. And on that note, I hope you all take care. I hope you really enjoy your 26 minutes back. And thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you all of your industries and everybody else, and to lead this program. And I really do hope that we've just left you in a spot where you're better off than you might have been 2 years ago in terms of managing Varroa. So thank you, everybody, and may the spread be slow. Thank you.
Thanks all.